Is Valencia still the perfect retirement spot in Europe, or has it changed? I talked to a dozen locals and expats to get a real update on this city that only 2 years ago we told you was the best place to retire in Europe. But since then, big changes have happened all over Spain. With first-hand accounts from Valencian residents, I have uncovered what changed there, and what alternatives to Valencia might be better nowadays. Today we discover all that, but first, what the heck happened in Barcelona? People were attacked by crowds just because they looked like British or American citizens. During the massive anti-tourist demonstrations that happened in the city, similar protests also happened in other famous Spanish cities like Mallorca and Malaga. So I went for my sources to check if this wave of revolt is affecting Valencia, the darling of expat retirees in Europe. This is what one of my sources told me. What happened in Barcelona is a few people sprayed water on a few tourists. Big deal. But the situation there is way worse than in Valencia. No one is hostile or has a hostile attitude in Valencia against foreigners. The problem is the rent hikes, end quote. And while this is not the only issue, probably is the most visible, the increasing housing costs. In 2021, the average price per square meter to rent an apartment in Valencia was 10 euros. Only 3 years later, by April 2024, this price skyrocketed to 14.56 euros per square meter. This is a 45% increase in only 3 years. This is way above the increase in the average salary in Spain. In good part, this increase is due to a tremendous explosion in demand from expats and retirees willing to move to a sunny, warm place to enjoy their golden years. The reason these huge protests happen in Barcelona, but not in Valencia, is that in Barcelona the situation is even worse. Entire districts of the city are completely taken over by Airbnbs, displacing locals and inflating the prices. Nowadays, in almost half of the city districts, you will need to spend more than 20 euros per square meter to rent an apartment. So, did this price inflation make Valencia too expensive? Is it still worth to move there for retirement? Let's compare the cost of living in Valencia with Tampa, in Florida, one of the favorite cities for Americans to retire to. When we made our video about Valencia almost 3 years ago, the city was way cheaper than Tampa. Right now, it's still 35% cheaper. Not impressive, but it's still a considerable difference. Would I move abroad just to save 35% of my income? Not sure. But soon I will show you some alternatives to Valencia where we'll save much more than that, so keep watching. Back to our comparison, the average rent in Tampa is $1,680 per month, which is around 1,480 euros. Let's see what you rent in Valencia for this value. In the city center, very close to public transport, commerce, hospitals, and entertainment, I found this 59 square meter 2-room apartment for 1,500 euros. It has a nice view and a decent standard, but it's not much cheaper or larger than what would you get in Tampa, in Florida. And in Tampa, for this price, the apartment at least has access to a swimming pool. This higher price in Valencia shows that inflation caused by Airbnb. Because in this part of the city, there are hundreds and hundreds of them. It's a shock for me because years ago, when we were talking about Valencia for the last time, the same kind of apartment would be for 1,100 or 1,200 euros max. But why a landlord would rent his apartment for 1,200 euros if he can make much more via Airbnb? It's not that I agree with the protesters throwing water at tourists. I don't blame the tourists. They are just enjoying their holiday, except those drunk loud ones. However, if you go a bit further from the historical parts dominated by Airbnb and closer to the beach, you'll find some cheaper places, like this 85 square meter 2-room apartment in Malvarrosa for only 1,350 euros, with a really cool sea view. So yes, as you can see, Valencia is still relatively inexpensive when compared to Florida, but by a much smaller margin than what we saw in 2021. Is it still worth it? Maybe. But here's a thing that nobody's talking about. If you are moving to retire abroad, you don't need to move to Valencia and even less to Barcelona. You don't need to move to cities where you compete for rent and probably displace young professionals who are trying to make a living. not far from these metropolitan areas. There are wonderful small towns with the same climate, or even better, as I'll show you in a few minutes. These small towns lost a lot of young residents to bigger cities. Some of them are dying because of the decreasing population. In these smaller cities, you would have all the amenities of an urban life, but for a much, much smaller cost. And here's the best part, no angry protesters harassing you while you lunch. In these cities, you'll be more welcome, especially if you try to learn some of the local language, of course. Before I review these 3 spectacular destinations, I would like to ask a small favor. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit the like and subscribe buttons. The first city I want you to think about is Castellón de la Plana. The city is located 76 kilometers from Valencia, or just 1 hour drive, and it's not a small city per se, since it has 150,000 residents. This city was once voted the ugliest in Spain, because large parts of the city were built in the 60s and the 70s, and apparently they are not very uniform. And when you see Spanish cities from above, you realize that Spaniards really like that uniformity, and maybe that's why they voted Castellón de la Plana as La Ciudad Más Fea, the ugliest city of Spain. But put that aside, this city has plenty of advantages. One of the biggest perks is the good infrastructure available, like big supermarkets, pharmacies, all these things. This city features efficient public transportation and well-maintained roads, making it easy to get around. The AVE high-speed train connects Castellón to major cities like Madrid and Barcelona, offering convenience and connectivity. Castellón also has good private healthcare options. The Vista Castellón Hospital is considered one of the best in Spain, for example. Close to the city, there are plenty of small villages where you can have a quiet life with access to all this urban infrastructure. The beautiful beaches of Costa de la Zahar are just a short drive away, perfect for relaxing days by the sea. Here is what a local told us about Castellón. Open quote, "This city is usually regarded as a bit dull if compared to other capitals in Spain, but the villages are some of the best in the whole country. These include both the countryside and the coastal ones." And remember when I told you that the average rent in Tampa, Florida is $1,680 per month? Let's see what you could rent in Castellón for half of this price, $800 or 740 euros. For only $686, you can rent this 3-bedroom apartment with 93 square meters, already furnished. If you want something even bigger, for $817, you can rent an entire duplex. This living room is huge. You can throw a party there. But let's say that Castellón, with its 150,000 residents, is too big for you. You want something smaller. In fact, that is indeed what another resident of the region of Valencia told us. Open quote, "If you don't want somewhere touristy and prefer to live a quiet life, look for a smaller city in the region of Valencia. You'll be able to find sizable houses with a pool outside the city itself. That's what I would look for if I were in your position." And that's what we went to look for. And the first smaller city we found is not one, but actually 2 in one, Sagunto and Puerto de Sagunto. Sagunto, with a population of around 65,000 residents, combines historical charm with modern amenities, only a 30-minute drive from Valencia. Puerto de Sagunto, the coastal part of the municipality, offers beautiful beaches and a relaxed atmosphere, attracting many expats. Infrastructure in Sagunto is also robust. Efficient public transport, including 16 regular daily trains to Valencia, makes commuting easy. The proximity to Valencia, just 28 kilometers away, means that the amenities of a big city are within easy reach without the hustle and bustle. And remember the local who told us that we could find an apartment with swimming pool access for less than 1,000 euros in these cities? He was absolutely right, because we found a house with swimming pool access for less than that. A fully furnished house with a lovely veranda and swimming pool access for only 825 euros. And all that is located only 200 meters from the Playa de la Humardá. It's mind-blowing that for such a low price you can live in such a nice place. But let's say that Puerto de Sagunto and Sagunto, with their 105,000 residents combined, is still too big for you, and you want an even smaller city that is even cheaper and has a fine beach. Let me present to you the city of Gandia, located less than 1 hour by car from Valencia. With a population of about 75,000 residents, it offers a perfect blend of convenient city life and tranquil coastal living. They also have many restaurants with traditional dishes. In fact, locals recommended that anyone who goes to Gandia should try the local fideuà. Despite being in such a splendid location, the cost of living there is significantly lower than in larger coastal cities of the Valencian region. In this city, you do not find as many expats as in Valencia or Puerto de Sagunto, and that might be a good thing. First, because the local community is friendly and welcoming, so with them, you learn Spanish and a bit of the Valencian dialect. In my channel, I always stress how important it is to blend with the locals, and Gandia is a good place for that. Second, and that is the most important, since the expat community is small, the prices are also much lower there. In Gandia, you can rent an apartment with swimming pool access for less than 600 euros. The best part is that it's only 60 meters from the beach, from this charming beach. And if you think this is an exception, it's not. In fact, I found multiple other similar offers of apartments with swimming pool access. Some of them are for as low as 525 euros per month. This is the equivalent of $570, which is the price to rent a parking space in some American cities. So yes, while Valencia might not have the cost-benefit ratio it had in the past, since it has become much more expensive lately, in the Valencian community, there are still many inexpensive and alluring gems that offer immense quality of life for very low prices. And before I end this episode, I want just to give 2 more pieces of advice that locals gave me when I asked them for tips for those planning to move to Valencia. The first piece of advice is this one. Open quote. If you decide to retire in Valencia, learn the language and make an active effort to be active within the community. You don't have to be friends with everyone. Just don't be a curse word to everyone else only because you have got money. End quote. The second tip is, open quote, Valencia is still a little cold in winter, very humid, keep in mind. Colder the more you go inland, but humidity is just in Valencia. It has to do with acequias, some unique local system of agriculture canals that run underground. Close quote. Now, if you would prefer a less humid place that is cheaper than Spain and has a longer warm season, the eastern part of Europe might have some good surprises for you, like Cyprus, Greece, and a surprising country in the Balkans. To discover which country I'm talking about, click on this video here on your left.